Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. Join me today, your host Rowena Hicks, as I talk with a guest about where burnout comes from. Is it our need to control? Are women worse at this than men? What is it about, and what even is burnout? And why are teachers so prone to heading towards burnout? So welcome today, Angela, who is my lovely guest today.
Hello, hi, how are you?
It's great to have you here. I'm good, thank you.
Good.
And Angela has been working in school for about 26 years, I think now. She's now deputy head. Yeah, pretty long. Not quite as long as me, but not bad, getting there. And she has an amazing, slightly unusual story, I would say. So I'm gonna pass over to her to share with us a little bit about her story of a particular time of struggle that she had a while back, actually.
Yeah, so like I'm sure a lot of the listeners, I've had lots and lots of different challenges in life, but I think one of the particular times where I felt that I really struggled, I was having a lot of issues in terms of my own personal life, which actually led to me having some mental health issues, and I had to step back from work for a few months because I was just feeling really overwhelmed with everything. And the level of, I guess, stress and emotional issues that I had in my own personal life was affecting the way that I was working. And I think for me, it was a really difficult challenge to be really conscious of that and actually sit back and reflect with my partner, but also the people I work with, that I did need some time and I did need some space. I think earlier on in my career where I'd found things quite difficult, I would have been more reticent and more worried about talking to people and confiding with people. But I think over the last few years, I've been really influenced by works from people like Brené Brown, where they talk about vulnerability. And actually, I realized that vulnerability was one of your real superpowers. So that time when I had to take some time off work, I was really worried about how I was going to tell my colleagues and what they would think about me. Because there's a lot of ego and a lot of stigma still attached around mental health and not being able to struggle. And I think when you're a senior leader in a school, you feel like you have to present a front, like you're on top of everything, like you're the swan and you're gliding around. But as we all know, we're constantly paddling and we're dealing with lots and lots of competing agendas. So I was really worried that people might see me as weak or not being able to cope, or I might fall into those stereotypes of like, oh, women are over emotional and they can't do the job and that kind of stuff. But I was really supported by my family and my friends. So when I was signed off work, I had a middle leaders meeting online. So it was a regular Monday morning meeting, but I wanted to let them know that I wasn't going to be there. So I logged in and I was just going to say, oh, I'm unwell. But then I thought, oh, I don't know, people might understand that. And, it might cause more problems. So I said, look, I'm really struggling at the moment with my mental health. I need to take a step back. And I was really vulnerable with it. And the response that I got from people is amazing. You will not be surprised to know that nobody, well, to my face at least, criticised me. I got lots of emails, lots of phone calls, lots of messages of real support, people asking me what I can do. But also because I was so vulnerable with them and I talked about that and I allowed people to see that I couldn't always cope with everything, it gave people a lot of permission to talk to me about their own struggles, and it allowed me to show that I have a level of empathy around that as well. And I've actually spoken to students about it in school now, as well as staff, and that's been really helpful, that students don't just see you as somebody who's unattainable and they see you as a human being as well.
Yeah, because a lot of school staff are told that they are seen as superhuman, and that's actually putting you on a pedestal that's not real. And I guess a question I would have is, have you always been this empathetic about people with mental health difficulties, those who are heading for burnout, whatever you want to say it, staff who are on survival? Do you think you've always been that understanding?
I'm gonna say that I wish that I had, but I, in the truth of being honest, I don't think I always have. I mean, I come from a very typical working class background, both for my parents, self-employed, in the service sector, they were publicans and you just worked all the time. So there was no time off. So I came from an environment where, I'm sure you'll be familiar with the phrase, you just put your face on, you get on with it, you suck it up, just carry on. And talking about your mental health or saying you weren't going to cope was a sign of weakness. So, and I think there was a lot of ego that I attached to that. And I think also as a mother and as a woman, we often put a lot of pressure on ourselves just to keep going. I have a sociology background, so, you know, in terms of like, say, feminist literature, we have these different burdens that we have. And, you know, as a working woman and a full-time, you have your, you know, your domestic role, your economic role, your family role, and you need to keep going for all of these things. So I was very much like that. And I think it took me really having a mental health crisis myself to actually realize there isn't any weakness in this. And actually, there's a huge amount of strength in saying, look, I'm not okay. At the moment, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm not coping with this at the moment. And I just need to either take some time back or learn to set some boundaries around what I can do and what I can't do. Because what I found was that I wasn't doing anything particularly well. And it was causing a lot of unhappiness for me and maybe frustration for people around me. But because I was trying to juggle it all and keep it here, ultimately, it wasn't a sustainable thing for me to do. As soon as I let go of that, and I stopped setting unrealistic expectations, but I also set boundaries around what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I think sometimes we think boundaries is just saying, no, I can't do that, but it's not about that. It's just being realistic about where you are and also maybe even just expressing how you feel. I was a lot happier, but also the people around me were a lot happier as well. And I became more able to do my role as a mother and as somebody at work and as a friend and so on as well. And it gave me the opportunity to pursue things that I wanted to do as well without feeling this stress constantly inside.
Wow, that's really interesting. I guess there's going to be people listening to this, and I have worked in one or two schools over the years that I would say the same, which is I am absolutely terrified of going to see my head teacher, my line manager, because they won't get it, because they are a machine and they're a robot and they don't understand empathy or understanding or kindness even. So what would you say to that person, apart from the fact they're probably in the wrong school?
Well, I might say that, and I think that's actually a really good thing to think about when you are thinking about schools. It's looking at the culture of your school. So maybe when looking at a school website, looking at interviews, looking at what's the staff retention like, spending some time in the school, having a walk around, asking them, do they have employee assistance support, and how are they supporting staff, especially around CPD and that kind of activity. But I guess if you're not in that kind of school and your school maybe is a little bit toxic or they're not being empathetic with you, I often find if you come from a place of this is how I am feeling and I just need to let you know, often people can't criticize you because you're not saying I can't do this and I can't do that. You're just saying, look, at the moment, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So I just need to discuss this deadline. Or at the moment, I've got several things going on here and I want to get them done, but I'm just a bit concerned that I'm not going to. Can I just be clear here about what your expectation is of me at this time? I think also something that we do, especially as senior leaders in school, is we set deadlines that we then become very stressed about, and are they realistic? So it's really considering the workflow and actually how much work there is. And I think as a senior leader in a school, sometimes you really want to bring a new initiative into place, but actually, is this the right time for it? Even if it's imperative, like what else is going to give? So one of the things that I would say to my head teacher is, look, I don't know, for example, dealing with a truancy problem is really important at the moment, but if you would like me to invest lots of time in this, I'm not going to be able to dedicate enough time to this area at the moment because I want to prioritize this. Is that okay with you? Or if they say, no, I want you to do both, it's like, well, actually, let's be realistic about that. Do we have any additional resources? Or how can we look at working in this in a smarter way? So I think it's coming not necessarily with the solutions, but coming with just a very honest, not like I can't do the job, but at the moment, these are the difficulties that I have. Can we sit down together and work out some solutions for this? So making your head teacher and your senior leader be part of that. So managing it up in a way. But yeah. I think one of the biggest piece of advice that I would give to people is, and one of the things that I've fallen into the trap of in the past, is not having real clarity about what's expected of you. Okay. No, that doesn't mean you need to be micromanaged, but just having that conversation around what is the expectation here for me. Yeah. So having real clarity.
That's really helpful. So you're not waiting till you're a complete sort of messy heap on the floor to go to your line manager or your head teacher or whatever, but actually you're going when you can see that workload has tipped because of extra things being asked or things that are changing. And you need to have that confidence in yourself to be able to say, okay, this has been added to my workload and I'm already full. Now it's going to spill over, or something needs to be taken out, and have it in a factual, understanding way.
And it doesn't mean it's going to be taken out forever, but it just might be like, what's the, you can do your matrices, what's the urgent priority now? And what, but I think being really honest, I think what we tend to do is we either hold it, which then causes 4 o'clock in the morning waking up and causes a huge amount of stress, or we back channel it. I think we talk to other people, and the problem maybe with talking to other people and confiding is they want to support you, so they might just go, oh no, this is awful, oh this is really bad, oh you need to do this, and they're soothing you rather than actually giving you solutions to support and move forward. So actually going to the person and speaking to them, you'll often find that actually they're really supportive and really good, as long as you're not just going saying I can't, and it's constantly happening. Because we all go through different problems. I mean, I'm 50 this year, so I've just gone through the menopause, and I've been really affected by that. And sometimes I feel like, I can't remember anything and I can't do anything, or I feel anxious, or I feel tired. I went for a whole period of not sleeping. And, when we look at research, women are more likely to be put on support plans through menopause, more likely to go part-time. And I think, really acknowledging that maybe you are struggling with things like menopause or pregnancy, or, or having a family, or, you've got a child who's unwell, or you've got an elderly relative who's really sick at the moment and you're having to drive up to their home every day to care for them. As an employer, you have a responsibility to your staff as well. So I think sharing these things then allows your employer, your line manager, to have context of where you are, and then it will reduce your stress as well.
Yeah. I remember one wonderful boss I had once when one of my family went into hospital, and it was during COVID. And so you were only allowed to visit, I think it was between 1 and 2 o'clock every day for that 1 hour. And I remember the head teacher just saying, okay, Ro, we're going to reorganize so that we can get you into that slot every day. And I was just bowled over by the kindness and the thoughtfulness. It wasn't even a question, and the reorganization that had to happen was quite considerable, but it wasn't a question. And actually that meant that my well-being shot up because I felt valued, I felt seen and heard. And actually, there's give and take, isn't there? I often stayed for hours after school, but I didn't mind if I knew that if I needed something, it was heard as well. But I want to just go back onto the burnout sort of what causes it and that sort of thing. And we discovered today that we're both reading the same book called Languishing, which is hilarious. And one of the key bits that I want to just read from it is, it says, being asked to prove your worth again and again, to show the world how resilient, strong and inspiring you are, and to simply shield yourself from the toll of discrimination builds up chronic stress over time. And I have a really strong sense that in school, as teachers, leaders, we constantly try to prove our worth. We don't feel good enough. We don't get a lot of affirmation because everyone's dashing around too fast. But it does lead to chronic stress. So, Angela, what would be your response to that? Or have you picked up sort of keys in the book that helps support a way through that?
Well, Dr. Corey Keyes in the book, I found it a really interesting book because it comes from a sociological and a psychological perspective. So it marries relationships as well as neuropsychology. So it's a really interesting perspective. So he talks about that we shouldn't pursue happiness, we should pursue well-being. And actually in the book, he gives a really nice test that you can rank your well-being based on lots of different categories. And I would recommend people doing it. So it's really good. And then once you've ranked it, you can then read about the different pillars of well-being. So he talks about the 5 pillars of well-being are having curiosity and growth. So I think what I would suggest is if you're feeling chronic stress and you're feeling this chronic worry, is have curiosity about where that's coming from. So one of the things that I do is, another book is that I read is Quiet the Chatter Inside, and I think it's great. So if your voice in your head is saying to you, you're not good enough, or you need to do this, or people are going to think negatively about you, just notice and have curiosity. Where is that voice coming from? What is that voice telling me? What do I need to do about it? And I think having some growth around what do I need to develop then? Because that voice inside you is there to help you and protect you. But what we do is it tends to be super negative. But it's then in changing the narrative and reframing that into, okay, so sounds really crazy, but thank you for raising that with me and doing this internal monologue, right? What can I do about that? And then having that growth around it. So using it as an opportunity to notice and grow. It also talks about warm relationships. And I think one of the things, I know it's really challenging in schools, especially where some schools have taken away staff rooms and we're all running about like crazy people and doing duties and it feels chaotic, but it's okay to sit in a staff room or even sit in a classroom with your colleague or find a spot outside and just sit and have a cup of tea with them and say, hey, how are you today? Have a chat with them. If we make an opportunity to have a relationship with somebody, then you will feel more of a sense of well-being, and having purposeful relationships is important. A sense of purpose, remembering why you're in education. So it's really easy, and we all do it, to really focus on the negative thing that's happened. So in my day-to-day, I had a really challenging interaction with a young man, and it would be really easy for me to go home really stressing about that challenging interaction. But I've forgotten about hundreds of interactions I had with children and colleagues that were amazing. And the great conversation I had about football, even though I know nothing about it. And I was chatting to a girl about a horse, and somebody else, it was her birthday. And I taught some history today, and we talked about the Industrial Revolution. They're really excited about factories and bricks and canals, and it was wonderful, and I loved it. So journaling can be really useful. And you're just going home and you're thinking about, let's write down 3 things that went really well today. And then 1 thing that I wasn't happy with, but then writing down how I can improve that straight away. And then you just then can leave it. So the interaction I had with that young man that didn't go very well today, so I can spend a little bit of time, right, what could I have done to make that interaction go better? And if it was nothing, then I need to like not worry about it. If it was, you know, I could have approached him in a kinder way, fine, I'm going to learn from that and I won't do that again.
Yeah, so, I absolutely love that, Angela. And actually, there's a piece of research, I talk about it in my first book, that to have good well-being, we actually need 5 positive to every negative piece of interaction that goes on in our lives. So I actually get people in my book to watch through their day, how many are they having? Because we don't notice the positives very often because we focus on the negatives, but have we got enough positives? Because are we being a positive person to others, in which case we get more positives back? So it's a really interesting piece of work, that one. Yeah.
Developing that sense of well-being from that internal happiness and that internal joy of positive interaction is really important. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of talk around counting your blessings and being grateful and the well-being around gratitude. For me, it's just noticing, actually, this part of my day went well. But I don't know, maybe it's when you're driving home, maybe it's when you're in the shower, maybe it's when you're cooking dinner, maybe it's when you're walking the dog. But if the negative voice is creeping in and the self-doubt voice, just say, thanks, no, that's true. But let me just think about what went well today and allow yourself an opportunity to sit in that. And you'll notice if you practice doing this and you're very mindful with it, which is quite tricky, you'll notice yourself shifting and not having a negative outlook. The 2 other pillars he talks about, a sense of transcendence. I think this is really important in schools because he talks about what he means by that is that you need to see yourself as a bigger part of something. And I think in schools, because we're quite isolated in our classrooms, sometimes we feel that this great sense of pressure on us. But actually, I feel this sometimes, that the results of the school are on my shoulders, but they're not really. They're on everybody's shoulders. And there's only so much I can do. And you've got to be really honest with yourself about that sometimes. And, you know, you can be disappointed, but you are part of a bigger picture. And I don't know, if the government imposes another Ofsted regime, there's not much I can do about that. You have to accept it and fine, okay, I need to work within that and not allow it to stress me because it's just another challenge and it's another rhythm. But the last pillar, and I think for me, this is my favorite, is a sense of joy and play. And I think as adults, we sort of forget that a little bit. This whole moment of unstructured joy and unstructured play. Play seems like a really odd word because it's something we associate with very young children. But he talks about play as in just finding the joy in things. So it might be just reading because you want to, or going for a walk, listening to music, or putting your favorite song on and dancing around your kitchen, or kicking a ball around the back garden with your kids. It could be anything, but the idea is there's no rules, and it's something that just makes you laugh. So finding a joy in every day. It could be at the moment there's loads of blossom about. I find that really joyful. It makes me feel really happy. So it's just as I walk, I look up and I notice that, and it makes me feel good. And if we're not maybe trying to go with these things, these 5 things, we're going to hold on to stress longer. So if you're feeling this stress, this, be realistic about where it's coming from, notice it, be curious around it, and then find some strategies to set boundaries and ideas about actually how can I untangle myself from this persona that I have at work as well.
Yeah, gosh, there's an awful lot in that. And I think both of us would definitely recommend this book. I
would definitely recommend it. It's very
brilliant.
Cool.
Absolutely brilliant. But Angela, you've given us so many things to think about. I could go on talking to you for hours. If people are keen to sort of find you, to sort of know more, where would they find you?
So I have a page on X, so that's Miss Appleby A, but I'm going to put a plug in for this, network leader for Women Ed London. So if you go to the Women Ed London website, or Women Ed London, it's in LinkedIn or Facebook, all other platforms as well, I think Instagram as well. You can find me there, and we're always having lots of events. So if anybody wants to come and chat at an event, we've got a London event coming up, so you can find that on the Women's Ed, and men are invited to the Women's Ed London as well. But it's just empowering women in education and women leaders. But we're really happy always to have male allies as well.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, your insight, and actually, being so vulnerable about with your story. So thanks, Angela. And thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.